6, 7, 8.
Hi, and welcome back to Sarah's Music. Today we're in our Berlin editing studio with our picture editor, Kevin.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Kevin.
Hi.
Without him, none of this would be possible. And in today's program, we are celebrating some of my favorite non-classical music we've had in the program so far. Instead of Beethoven, Mozart and Bach, we have jazz, gospel, and world music. Let's take a look. New York is one of the most musically diverse cities in the world, and I spent a week there exploring these three very different music genres, starting at Columbus Circle in Central Park in the House of Swing. Wynton Marsalis is a jazz legend who also studied classical music. Well, you say as your mission that jazz is a metaphor for democracy, and then it's so free that you get everyone feeling that feeling, being able to do what they want.
It's free, but that freedom is undergirded by very strict principles. There's strict responsibilities, like in a democracy, the need for education, the need for integrity, and the need to understand the Constitution and how it works, something that in many democracies, you get lazy in it. And in jazz, is to be able to swing and play in time, to know how to address the form harmonically, and a certain level of instrumental virtuosity and knowledge of how to create vocal sounds and things that are part of our music. The tendency is to take that freedom and try to get away from those fundamentals, as we try to do with our democracy. It's always been interesting to me that the national constitution is less pages than any state constitution. So it's very strict principles. And it can be amended, but there's certain fundamentals that have to be in place for this type of system to work. And jazz is that way also. Moving uptown to the Bronx, I spent the day at the Cathedral at Greater Faith, being inspired by gospel music. The power of this music was incredible, and as Damien Sneed explained to me, the influence of classical music is very evident.
And that one word is glory. His name is my Lord. Oh, Jesus.
What would you say is the Damien Sneed style of gospel?
My gospel style is a mixture of classical, jazz. I'd also say there's some blues because I'm from the southern part of America, so a lot of the style is close to blues. But if you would compare me to classical composers, I'd say my writing style is similar to Strauss, Aaron Copland, and maybe Samuel Barber.
Everyone has a place. Oh, everyone has a place. Everyone has a place in the house of
Let's take, for example, Beethoven's piano sonata, the Pathétique.
Okay.
The opening, you know, from the first movement. You know that section? So in gospel music, we may have songs like that that are like, Precious Lord, take my hand, lead me on. And the chords, very grave, just like Beethoven asked for. But then when you get to the next section where the rhythm comes in, the allegro, con brio, I believe, it was more like... Of course, you know that now. In gospel music, that's the shout, like this.
Now, moving downtown to Brooklyn, I went out for bagels with the members of the Brooklyn Rider String Quartet, who are classically trained and are constantly exploring new ideas with their music. This is really a string quartet with a difference. There are a lot of quartets that really concentrate on the quartet repertoire. You guys decided you had to be something different.
I think we might be different. I'm not sure if we decided that to get going. You know, I think it's just a reflection of all of our interests because we like so many things and we want to kind of experience the world through the string quartet, and it turns out to be a vehicle where you really can do that very easily because you know, our tradition really is a world tradition.
Do you guys have any technical boundaries? Are there any really crazy pieces where you just think, oh no, I'm not doing that?
Oh, I think, you know, we always get, you know, asked to do things that, you know, we haven't done before.
It's definitely part of the tradition, right? You think about late Beethoven string quartets, people said they were unplayable at the time. People often said, you know, like the music of Charles Ives, for instance, was unplayable. And, you know, I think that's how the tradition kind of moves forward in time, is by constantly pushing everybody's boundaries, both players and audiences.
Beethoven would have loved you guys. For the next two segments, we're back in Berlin. Berlin also has a hugely diverse music scene, and there's so much music going on here that it's virtually impossible to experience it all. But I'm very glad that we experienced these next two events. I had the pleasure of meeting and working with the composer and DJ Henrik Schwarz, who doesn't play an instrument, but plays the computer, as he says. He, again, is someone who is constantly pushing the borders of his music, and he decided to find out what his music would sound like on classical music instruments without the electronic beats. Everybody in the clubs are moving, it's this seething mass, and that gives you a lot of energy. Is it strange for you to see these people sitting and listening like this?
No. For me, it's an exchange of energy, and that works with a seated audience in the same way like with a dancing audience. It's what we as performers do, or how I see it, you throw a spark into the room, and then you get if you're lucky, you get a thunderstorm back, and you could even get that from a seated audience because you can feel it if there is something happening out there or not.
We're ready to give you some MGM glamour. Ta-da!
Ta-da! Indeed. The John Wilson Orchestra brought Hollywood glamour into the Berlin Philharmonic, playing well-known songs from the classic MGM musicals. Meet and fall in love with this wonderful orchestra. It was one of my favorite concerts ever. some people from the outside might think this is a lighter music genre, but it's like you guys take it as seriously as you would a Bruckner symphony or a Brahms symphony.
Of course, we take it seriously. The fact that it's light music, that it's easy to assimilate, that it falls into your lap, doesn't make it any easier to play. In fact, I'll tell you something, it's quite a lot harder to play than a lot of standard repertoire, because the dressing of this music, the clothing of these tunes is so important. And the arrangers and the orchestrators who wrote these arrangements, they were masters, so they really pushed these orchestras to the limit.
No death, like again Macbeth, no ordeal, like the end of Camille, this goodbye brings a tear to the eye. The world is a stage, the stage is the world of entertainment.
So that's all from Sarah's Music for today. Okay, Kevin, do you prefer classical or non-classical?
Both.
Good answer. See you next time on Sarah's Music. Bye-bye.
Bye.
It's an honor for me to have you to do the horn challenge. We want a real Technicolor Hollywood blast of glossiness.
God. Hang on.